Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
Just adds to so much more kind of flexibility, even if it's, again, a feature that's not necessarily designed with you or my kind of use case in mind. It just gives you more and more options of how you want to do stuff, where you want to do it. It can't be a bad thing to give people more options, and if they need to sit a certain way or just be more comfortable, it doesn't have to be permanent things that are going on with you that require you to use it, but it could just be, on a particular day you need to do it this way. Again, just nice to have these different options for the way you do work.
Welcome back to iPad Pros. I'm really excited to share with you today a lot of thoughts on iPadOS with my guest, Andy Nicolaides. You can listen back to episode 31 to hear Andy's first appearance on iPad Pros. Both Andy and I have been using it since the beta came out on that Monday of WWDC, and have some impressions on how this new OS will change the way you can get work done on the iPad. There are two things I did forget to mention during the podcast that I thought I'd share at the top of this episode here. The first is the cool addition that pretty much all of the 3D Touch functionality is now in iPadOS as a long tap. As someone who has never had a 3D Touch device, it's really amazing having it here on the iPad. It's so useful in Safari and on the home screen. I'm discovering new places this feature comes in handy almost daily. The other thing I forgot to mention during our time talking about the mouse is there is a way to manage your multitasking with the Assistive Touch menu. I found it's best to disable all other options, so all you have in that menu is multitasking management. It makes it so much quicker to get into that and not accidentally get into another menu item that you rarely use. You can do things like dismiss slide over, assign a new app to split view. Basically anything you can do with touch to manage your app's multitasking can be done with this menu item, and you can invoke this with a custom button on the mouse so it's always available. You can see a video of this via my Twitter account at iPad Pros Podcast. It's one of the recent tweets where I did show this in action. With that, I just want to remind everyone to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Every review goes a long way in helping others discover the show through better podcast SEO. You can also support the podcast at patreon.com/iPadPros. Even $1 there goes a long way. Thanks to those that do support the show on Patreon already. With that, I'm pleased to share my first episode about iPadOS. There will be many more to come as we discover more and more about this brand new OS over the summer. Without further ado, here's my interview with Andy. Enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast, Andy.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Tim.
Absolutely. So I want to have someone else that's been living with what we can now call iPadOS for the past week or so. And welcome.
Thank you. Are we the thrill seekers that Apple were talking about in their advice not to install
guess.
it?
Yeah, Apple's a bit grumpy. Wait till the public beta, they're saying. I've been finding it very stable against what I've been hearing online and elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely problems. The more I'm using it, the more I'm seeing, but I don't think it's necessarily any worse than previous early betas betas that have been released. There's no, well, at least that I've found, no kind of showstoppers, and there's not as many app crashes of stuff that I've seen again in previous years. So touch wood, it's looking all right at the minute.
Yeah, the two consistent bugs I've seen so far in beta 1 is you can't drag apps from Spotlight down to your split view, which is terrible. I mean, that's that could be a deal breaker for some.
It's inexcusable.
And then the other slide over apps, it's really hard to slide them over off the screen, because that bar in the very top middle, in the beta, does not behave as it should. Instead, you have to find some weird part in the right part of the window and drag that without tapping the content.
Yeah, that is a bit fiddly. I was literally, for about 5-10 minutes, I was flicking around with that thing the other day. I thought I was just being stupid or tapping the screen or something. I thought it's definitely not going anywhere. It just keeps coming back.
Yeah, but other than that, very stable, and it's been great using it. I've got it installed my 10.5-inch iPad Pro. What hardware are you using this on?
I've got it on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, so the 2018. Was it 2018 it came out?
Okay, yeah, the third generation.
That's it, yeah. Okay.
So you have Face ID. Has that been noticeably faster for unlocking? That's something I can't experience myself.
It has. Not so much on the iPad, to be honest, because that always seemed a lot faster than my iPhone one, but I've got it on the iPhone as well, and it definitely feels faster on that.
Okay. So what I want to do in this next how many minutes is just kind of go over how the changes to iPadOS have made working on the iPad this week better, or what experiences have changed. I think to start, mouse support is probably one of the biggest fundamental changes to be available to iPad users, and I'm curious if you've been diving into that.
I have, yeah. I've been really enjoying mouse support. Actually, it was something I thought I wanted, and then when it kind of came out, it wasn't quite what was expected because, for anyone that doesn't know, it's essentially an accessibility feature. For me, at least, it's been working really well.
I've been really impressed with the customizability with those buttons. In many ways, it feels more customizable than if it was a standard feature not meant for accessibility, because of the customizability with those buttons that may not have shown up in that way otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's a very good point. It's super powerful. I think I haven't actually tried this, but I believe you can trigger shortcuts and stuff from it as well. It's not just system actions and stuff.
You can. I tested that. I don't have a good idea of what to dedicate to a button for a shortcut at this time, but you are able to do some really cool things. For my configuration, I can pull up. My right click is my home button, and that is something that people are asking about. Right click, that doesn't really exist on iOS. Instead, you're actually long clicking is kind of the right click for iOS, and that would be nice if they enabled that, doing a long click instead of manually holding it down a little bit longer.
Because it is set up, at least for now, as an accessibility thing, it just kind of copies what your finger does. So you would think there would be a way of replicating that action, but it doesn't seem to at the moment. Maybe it's something that's coming a bit further down the line. I know this is, as we've already said, Apple warned against installing this one, so I guess it's maybe a little bit earlier build than they usually have ready for WWDC. So I guess things could change any day now, I guess, when the second beta comes out.
Yeah, so I picked up this $10 mouse, a USB mouse that I plug in through the Lightning adapter, the unpowered one, to hook up to the older iPads, and it's phenomenal. So 5 buttons. I've got the single tap, and then for right click, I have the home button, and then on the scroll wheel, I can summon the dock by clicking that in, and then the open menu, which is the accessibility menu, which lets you get into a lot of different areas. You can click into notifications, Siri, all that kind of stuff. The control center is another one I have toggled from the buttons. And what have you found to be the most useful customizable buttons for your mouse, and what's kind of your setup there?
I've done pretty much the same as you, to be honest. The mouse I've got, I'm not sure what it was called. I think it was a Logitech MS2, something like that. But that's one of the ones with the the little Bluetooth dongle things you can put in, those kind of mini dongle things. So I've got that plugged into a hub, so it does actually work kind of wirelessly. Yeah.
Okay. So those like fake Bluetooth ones actually that use the dongles will work if you plug it into those hub like devices.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got I think it's called a Hyperdrive hub that put out on Kickstarter. So yeah, I've got it plugged in through there, and then it's got little side buttons, go back to the home screen and stuff. I haven't got anything like you, kind of haven't had a chance to set up any interesting shortcuts and stuff. So it's just the basic kind of operations.
Yeah. And a nice setting they did include is you're actually able to turn off the accessibility assistive touch little icon that normally would show up, and there's an option to hide that when you're connected to a mouse, which is really nice, because before you'd have this little annoying other icon on there that you don't really need. So that is a nice addition.
Yeah, that is good that they got rid of that. It is a very well thought out feature. I think it's got a lot of customization on there. You can't reduce the size of the pointer, unfortunately, though. That quite, I guess I saw as a bit of a exaggeration, but it's obviously not a pointer style, but I guess when it's trying to replicate what your finger would be doing, it has to be a certain size, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I fired up Assassin's Creed Odyssey the other day.
Okay.
And on my iPad through Remote Play. And it's funny, the cursor in that game is identical pretty much to the iPad cursor. It's this circle with a tiny circle in the middle.
Oh, okay.
So I guess this is used in other applications like gaming as something where you don't want a mouse, but perhaps the circle type thing. But it would be nice to be a little smaller. I do like that it goes transparent when it's idle, which is nice. So it's not as in your face when you can when you don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, there's, like I said, there's some nice little touches in there. The interesting thing I thought with the change to the way you select text and stuff, where you kind of just press in where you want it to go and then start dragging, that works a lot better. I'm still kind of getting the hang of it using my finger to do that, but I seem to be able to nail it quite quickly using the mouse. And it feels like it's, I'm sure it wasn't the case, but it feels like it was kind of set up with that in mind.
Yeah, it's been a lot more natural for me. The first day I was like a bit at odds with it, but I've really gotten the hang of it. And something I've also kind of learned to do is those 3-finger gestures to copy and paste.
Right.
At first I was trying to do it on the screen where I wanted it to happen, but I realized it's going to paste it where the cursor is.
Yeah.
It's going to copy whatever text is highlighted. So you can actually have that gesture be implemented wherever on the screen. And by doing that, that's really made it better for me, at least, being able to just not worry about where my hand is to do that gesture.
That's a good tip, actually. I've been practicing trying to do that, and I'd look a bit of a madman, just like clawing at my screen, and it doesn't seem to be doing it.
It is fun.
When it goes right, it's very satisfying. The amount of times it does go right, for me at least at the moment, is probably about 1 in 10. So I need to practice that. But moving it away from where I'm actually trying to put the text so I can see things a little bit better, it's probably a better idea. I kind of saw it more like presumably you did originally, of just, I want it to go there, so I'm kind of flicking at the screen where I want it to go, but it's probably not the best bet.
Yeah, the other challenge, I guess, is I love the 4 and 5 finger gestures to go home and swipe app to app. That's something I use quite a bit, and it can be a bit hard sometimes to not have 4 fingers down versus 3. I wish there was some way around that. But.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take some getting used to. I think it's there's muscle memory that we've built up over however many years with the closing action, like I said, with multiple fingers to reduce it, go back to the home screen, close the app or whatever. So it's definitely going to take a little bit of practice not to pull too many fingers in. That's what I'm doing at the moment. It either doesn't work at all, or I just close the app when I'm trying to copy something.
So these gestures are really helpful if you're not on a keyboard or using a mouse and all that. And the other thing that you've really improved is one of the big annoyances I've had as an iPad user when I am without a physical keyboard is the screen space you lose whenever you type into a text box. Say I'm like typing a URL, half the screen disappears to this huge keyboard. Now, when you're not attached to a hardware keyboard, you can say, let me do this tiny floating window and have my screen real estate not be consumed by that keyboard anymore. And that is really nice to have that there, and it floats literally anywhere. Have you been using that much at all? Is Swipe working for you well? How's that going?
I've been using it a bit, like I said, when it's more is exactly for that use case you said, where you've got to enter a bit of text in something. But for the most part, because I've got the larger iPad, I do use it kind of fairly stationary quite a lot, so and attached to a keyboard, so I don't need to do it much, but it is nice to have if I'm just kind of wandering from room to room or something and need to do something quick. But it's definitely better, the Swipe keyboard definitely helps with that, like I said, if you're just holding it on the side and you just want to do something quick as you're moving about, it's really helpful.
Now the other thing as far as getting around the system that they've improved, so beyond mouse support, which I think is going to be really great for when I'm at my desk or a table, and I am finding I'm working at tables about 1,000 times more than I used to because of the mouse. I don't know. Have you changed your habits as far as your work environment because of that?
I have, yeah. I tend not to, because I've got a small kind of office kind of study space that I use at home. But one of the reasons, I liked iPads in the first place is that I can kind of sit around the house or do different things when I'm, if I'm just using it in a non-work mode, when I'm just relaxing in the evening or whatever. But I found myself looking for more reasons to kind of sit down at my desk and kind of use it there. Because I guess the novelty will wear off fairly soon, with the mouse. But it's just something because I've wanted it for so long and it's working so well for me. And again, I appreciate it's not really what it's for. And it's not to replace the kind of touch interface and the way you do stuff, but it's definitely enjoyable, and I'm having even more fun on my iPad than I usually do, which is good.
Yeah, flexibility, I think, is just the big thing I've noticed with iPadOS is the flexibility of interacting with your device.
Yeah.
And before we move off the mouse is, as you know, I work with 2 iPads sometimes, and right now I've got my smaller iPad a little bit further away out of touch range, but the mouse is next to me, and I can still interact with that iPad a little bit further away than I can actually reach. So it does bring a lot of possibilities up. You could see people having a stand where really high up at eye level, and you don't want to be reaching up at that point if you don't have something for your hand to rest on, kind of thing. So it brings about a lot of new different work, I guess, configurations. And the other one is voice control. And this is another thing where I was surprised to find another accessibility feature that me, as someone that I guess doesn't technically need it but finds it useful, is actually using quite a bit. If I'm just lounging on the couch home alone or whatever, I'll turn on voice control, and it's a very, I guess, cathartic experience just talking to your iPad and it doing everything for you. And have you played around with voice control much?
No, I haven't at all, actually. I obviously watched the video about it. It looked very impressive, but I haven't actually dived into that yet, to be honest. I don't know really how it works, beyond just seeing it in that video. So do you have to record or kind of tell it what you want to do for different actions, or does it just kind of natural language passing or something that...
It's very natural, so it all works offline. And the way I typically have it set up is where it shows the numbers.
Okay.
So every tappable thing on your screen has a number associated with it. So you can just say, you can say tap 5, or you can just say 5 and it's going to tap it. So 5, and it'll open up mail, and then you see mail message, 16 halfway down your iPad. You say 16 and it opens that up.
Oh, wow.
And throughout the whole interface, you just say numbers and it'll click into it. And if it's in a text field, you can just start talking and it'll dictate text. It's just very natural. And there's certain things that you can also just say, open Slack, and anywhere in the system, if you have an app installed, you can just say open the app name. So there are speakable items as well. And it's one of the most intuitive, most natural ways of doing voice control I've ever seen. The one option I do wish they would have is to turn off dictation when I'm in a text field. So when I'm listening to a podcast, I don't accidentally get some random bits of things, because listening to a podcast isn't bad for navigation, because the odds of someone doing what I just did is very low, but dictation would kick in for sure. But it's great.
So do you just turn that on, and then once it's on, it's listening to everything you say from that point?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yep, so I have in Control Center, I have a bunch of different accessibility options that I can pull up at any time. So from there, I can turn on the mouse, the voice control, full keyboard access, and color filters, and I switch between those throughout the day depending on what I'm doing.
Oh, wow, nice. I need to dig a little bit deeper in there then, I think, by the sounds of it. I know what I'll be playing with tonight after this call.
Yeah, it's so much fun, voice control. Like I didn't think it would be, because I've played with the voice over before, and that's just not for me. I mean, it's designed for someone that can't see, I believe, is kind of who it's for. And I believe voice control can even initiate shortcuts. You can do custom commands to program in gestures and things like that. It's kind of wild. You can tell your device to go to sleep and reboot, and it's very in-depth. And you can do grids and zoom in to grid 5 or whatever.
Okay. Wow.
And then there's also full keyboard access, so you can navigate the whole UI with the keyboard.
Okay.
I'm finding I'm using that one less, because I figure I'm going to use the mouse or voice control, but that one's also pretty nice to have in there.
Like you said before, it just adds to so much more kind of flexibility, even if it's, again, a feature that's not necessarily designed with you or my kind of use case in mind. It just gives you more and more options of how you want to do stuff, where you want to do it. It can't be a bad thing to give people more options, and if they need to sit a certain way or just be more comfortable, it doesn't have to be permanent things that are going on with you that require you to use it, but it could just be, on a particular day you need to do it this way. Again, just nice to have these different options for the way you do work.
Yeah, I could imagine if you're in a brainstorming session, you pacing around your room, talking to your iPad to control it. As I believe people did in the Mac days with Dragon, had some applications that would control your Mac in a similar way, where maybe you do want to just pace around the room talking to your iPad. And, just possibilities of just different work environments are just fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what other features in iPadOS have really changed the way you're going to be getting work done on your iPad?
The file stuff has been dramatic change. A lot of the stuff, I think, a lot of the criticism that things like files and file management stuff had, I think, haven't been as big an issue as people say they have been for a while. You know, a lot of people until now all of a sudden thought that with things like in files, you have to save documents within the kind of siloed off space for a different app, and you can't do much else. You know, it can't replace Dropbox and that kind of stuff. But you know, I think, which I mentioned to you when we had our chat a few months back, I've been using it like a Dropbox replacement for years. You know, I've had, you can create your own folders, you can drop stuff in wherever you want it to go. It doesn't have to be in a separate app, but it's just kind of changed a bit more power user stuff in there now. So like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this to you at the time, but things like, you know, if you have video files saved into files or iCloud Drive, you want to, you download it, you want to view it for a day or so. There was no option previously to remove that download. Manually, at least, you could delete the file completely and it would take it off iCloud as well, or you had to just leave it on the iPad and the system would remove it when it's ready. You know, when it runs out of space, it'll get rid of whatever it wants, whether you wanted that file or not. But now when I've been kind of digging around, there's that contextual menu when you long press on files or different things. Now it opens kind of a sub menu. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, it's much better than before. So before you had this horizontal, more traditional looking a long tap kind of menu. Yeah. And now it's actually thought out that, hey, this is a really long list. Let's give you a vertical list that you can read everything in it. There is that remove file or remove download option. Yeah. And there's also pin, which is the opposite of that, of please don't get rid of this file when I'm on the airplane, please.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's these little things that in isolation, if you just said, oh, look, now you can remove a download, it sounds a bit silly, and you ask questions why it wasn't there before. But there's so many of these little kind of quality of life updates and additions that when you compile them all together, you get a really kind of solid update to the way you get things done, and you know how you manage files and different things. So there's lots of little bits like that. I guess there's more than just one fundamental thing that's changed everything. It's more just I explore this, and when I try and do something, I'm surprised that it actually does allow you to do that now. It's little things that have been leading to a bigger change, I suppose, overall.
Yeah, for sure. And external hard drive support is another one, and this is one I'll be using quite a bit because to get audio files from the Zoom recorder to my iPad, I have been using this little wireless hotspot device to do that. But now I'll be able to just plug it directly into my iPad, and that seems great. It's not something most people will need, but it's really nice to have there. And with the new multiple window support, you can have your SD card on one window and your destination window elsewhere, and you can have, all of that open and drag between the two. If you have a hub, you can also have multiple external devices hooked up at once, which is neat.
Do you know if you've got something hooked up, can you drag kind of images out? Like say if you wanted to do a more physical backup of your iCloud photo library or something, can you kind of drag them out and save them onto an external drive or something?
I don't see why that wouldn't work, because you can drag from Photos to the Files app, so that would work. Yep.
Okay, that's interesting, because I've got all my photos in iCloud Photo, and I don't really have. I've probably got kind of scattered backups on kind of Google Photos and things that I've used in the past, but I've been thinking I should probably back things up a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is a select all in Photos, so that might be a bit. There might be. I forget. It's been a bit since I've tried to do that.
It wouldn't take too long to drag 30,000 photos in one at a time.
Right.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I've got a few years I can devote to that. It'd be fine.
But on older iPads, it's a bit interesting because you do need that USB 3 to Lightning adapter that has a power as well. So you're going to be traveling with a battery that plugs into that, because your hard drives and even SD card adapters need that power brick with it.
Makes sense, yeah. That's
one of the big advantages of USB-C is there's a heck of a lot more power coming out of that, so you can just plug drives directly in with no extra power or finagling. Something I did run across is it's weird. I have a 4 terabyte mobile hard drive that has never given me a power error before, but this little SD card reader thing that's USB will give me an error every time I plug it in. The first time I just have to replug it in, and it works the second time consistently.
Okay.
So there are some weird quirks if you're on an older iPad. Yeah.
Right, okay. It's interesting. I wonder if these things will get ironed out on the kind of subsequent betas, or if it's just kind of the way it is, the way it's going to work.
Yeah, hopefully they get ironed out. But there's also, if you did want to just solve this the other way, for $29, I believe there is a Lightning to SD card camera connection kit from Apple, and that would now work with the Files app versus before it was just photos.
Okay. Oh yeah, maybe that's a better option then.
Yeah, but overall Files feels much more like, Finder functionality. There's server support, multi-window support. You can zip and unzip files. That's huge. And iCloud folder sharing. You can share an entire folder now, which is huge.
Yeah.
And I thought I saw somewhere in there a way to scan documents directly in the Files app. I can't find that anymore. I thought I saw it, though, earlier.
You definitely can. Again...
it's a triple dot. Yeah, so in the sidebar of the Files app,
okay.
You can, say, connect to server, edit sidebar, or scan documents. So that's where you go. You can actually scan documents right in Files. And apparently this is an API, so third-party developers can use this scan documents in their apps as well.
Okay.
Which is great. And it's in the Mail app right now. So the thing that was in Notes is now kind of spreading everywhere, just like Pencil Kit will be everywhere.
That's really good. It's again, all these little things that you would have, a couple of months ago, you'd have a shortcut for it. The zipping and unzipping, I had a shortcut for zipping, a shortcut for unzipping, and different stuff like that. It's just nice that it's now all these little kind of hacks and tweaks people had are all essentially baked in. It just makes kind of quality of life updates and changes just make things a little bit smoother, doesn't it? Of you don't have to think, what do I have to get for this? And it's like that local storage app. You've probably used that in the past.
Oh yeah,
to make your local storage actually work like you would think it would. And again, that's now redundant because local storage does work like you would think. You can just save stuff there, create folders, and put stuff where you want it, and it stays there, which is again a nice little simple thing to add, but just increases the overall kind of quality and efforts you got in there.
Yeah, I now have a local Scratch folder, which is really nice.
Okay,
because I have an iCloud Scratch folder as well that I use. But yeah, if you're working on stuff that you don't want beamed up to iCloud every 2 seconds that you might delete in a second on purpose, that's really great to have there. I do wonder if I'll end up using the Documents app by Riedel anymore, because I was using that app to download stuff from the internet and zip and unzip stuff, and that was my main use of it. So I'm curious where they'll go with things like that. I know it's kind of like a music player now as well, so they are trying to expand its functionality to do other things too.
Yeah, that's another casualty, I think, of all these enhancements. So it's similar to you. I haven't touched it since trying iOS 13, and I can't imagine why I would use it again. Like I said, there is that music player, but there's probably better options for that as well. I don't know about you, but my Documents is just a bit of a dump of little things that I've tried to download, and just things that have been forced in there because it appears to be the default for a lot of file types and stuff, but it's not very organized my end. It's just literally a dump of stuff that I've unzipped in the past, and there's nothing I would miss not having that app anymore, I don't think.
Something I do wish Apple would add in the next update to iPadOS is the ability to say PDFs default open in X application. There is no default apps, so when you open stuff, there's no actual way to tell where to go.
Yeah, that does give you strange results sometimes, doesn't it? It just kind of makes up what it wants to do,
yeah.
or just insists on opening it in a certain way that's sometimes hard to get out of that loop of it just doing what it wants to do.
And then the other thing I hope that gets addressed next year is adding your own music to the music app, as well as the ability to, I guess, back up or store movie purchases from iTunes on an external drive like you can on Mac. Like enhancing all of the media management stuff that has to do with Apple's apps would be nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about something like that, but yeah, that would be very helpful.
Because how cool it would be to have like this, 4 terabyte little mobile drive with you, and you have all your movies stored there, and you can play them. The only way you can do that now is if you do it with ripped DVDs or Blu-rays that are stored versus iTunes content. I guess I haven't tried throwing DRM to movies on an external drive. I don't think it would work, though.
No, I assume not. But yeah, it would be good to be able to... I know you only quote-unquote own the stuff that you buy from stuff like iTunes and stuff, but still, you should have a little bit more flexibility of the way you use it, definitely.
Now, one of the big changes to getting work done on an iPad, of course, is desktop browser. Now, how much have you played with this so far?
A fair bit, because I've got the larger iPad. It's sometimes hard to tell which version of a site I'm getting sometimes, but now that I've been using it on there, you can really tell the difference on certain sites that I visit that I always assumed maybe I was getting the proper desktop version of an app, and I haven't. There's not a lot of use cases where it's been an issue for me in the past. I don't use things like Squarespace. I don't use Google Docs or things like that a lot. So I know those are the big kind of ones that get referenced for this, but it's not changed too much at this point, at least. We're obviously only a week into using it, but I think it's probably having an impact that I'm not even noticing, if you know what I mean. It's just so it's so well kind of implemented. You don't have to do anything. It is doing as they've said in the keynote. When you check with the new little kind of symbol, the icon that changes replaces the long press that you used to have to do on the address bar to request the desktop site and load without content blockers and stuff. I keep checking on a site just to kind of make sure it's doing what it's doing, and it definitely is. Is it had much of an impact your end as yet?
I've tested it.
Yeah.
So I've tested in Google Docs. That's awesome. I've tested in Squarespace, and it's this is working. So I do have a Squarespace site that I don't update that much, and the one test that did fail was Google Hangouts Live from the iPad, which you can't still do. The app doesn't do this, and the website says I need to try it on Safari because of course it does. I'm guessing it's a Flash requirement or some desktop thing that just isn't there yet because it's video and it's complicated. But overall, it's great. Everything's working better. I would feel much more comfortable going into an office environment and not feeling like I'm trying to make it work when maybe it's not the best browser for the job.
Yeah.
Now, I think it will pass in a lot of situations it didn't before.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a thinking about it now. I did have a use case that I wanted to try using it for, but it didn't actually work. You still can't get on iCloud.com through there. It still just tells you to go and do it through the iPad. But I had to, or was trying to set up an alias in the Apple Mail thing on iCloud.com. Because as far as I know, it's the only place you can set it up on the site, but it wouldn't let me actually get the kind of desktop site. I still had to go into iCab Mobile and do it in there. It worked in there, but Safari just wasn't having it.
Hopefully by the end of the beta process that is ironed out.
Yeah, I think they just need to change their site somehow.
It is weird. If you tap and hold on the refresh icon in Safari now, it lets you copy the URL. All of the other stuff was tucked away into that the display menu, the A in lowercase a. I wish there was like some customizability stuff I could put in the refresh tap down because I'm so used to having that.
Yeah, I'm still reaching up there. But the other menu is nice. Again, it's that kind of the same kind of sub menu you get with long pressing on files and stuff, isn't it? That kind of that proper drop down, not just a horizontal bar again. I do like that look. Like I said, I don't know what the actual name, if they've got a name for that kind of sub menu, but I've been exploring around the system, kind of pressing on stuff and seeing where I can get that thing to pop up because it's useful and it's got a lot of stuff tucked away in there usually.
Yeah, the other cool thing with Safari and other apps that will support this is multi-window support.
Yes.
And the coolest thing is if you just pull up from the dock Safari, so you open Safari, then you pull up, you can actually grab another icon of Safari, put it next to it. You can grab a third icon of Safari and put in the slide over, and you can just keep dragging that app icon and pulling it up to make new windows of Safari. In some cases, some apps are document-based, but with Safari, you can just keep grabbing that icon to make new instances, and that's something I'm finding really intuitive and useful.
Yeah, that is really useful. When I heard the rumors and stuff about what was coming and everyone kept saying multi-instances of apps, I always thought, I don't know when I would actually need to do that, but since being able to do that, I've used that a lot on various different things. For mail, if you're trying to write a mail, you can have the another instance of it up to read the message you're replying to. And I was updating my blog the other day and I had the code on one bit because you have to go to different menus to find it on the site that I've got. So I had the kind of the code up one side and then the actual site on the other side, so I could change the code on one window, refresh the page on the other. There's a lot more use cases for it than I imagined there would be when I was kind of listening to the rumors and stuff, like I said.
Yeah, in my last day job, something I used all the time, and one of the reasons I worked with two iPads every day, was having Google Sheets open with two different tabs. And you needed two different iPads to do that back then.
Right.
And now you'll be able to have one iPad in both instances of the same document open with different sheets. And that's going to be so great for so many people.
Yeah. Again, it's another kind of reasonably small thing that's just making a big difference the way people get stuff done, which is what this update seems to be all about.
Now, something I did discover in the forums is that desktop browsing mode evidently is not there for the iPad mini. I know you're a mini user as well, so that's something just to, I guess, be aware of.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess they figured the screen size wasn't big enough to justify it, at least at this point in the beta process.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, I suppose. I haven't dated the mini. That's my kind of stable thing I've kept, so I'm recording with it now and stuff, so I thought I better keep that one clean, I suppose, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
I couldn't resist doing it on the... I should have, left the big iPad and kept that safer, being the kind of main one, but I couldn't resist the new kind of home screen look and stuff, so I jumped in, but I'll keep the mini off it for now, but I will try that when I can.
So the other multi-window thing that we get, and this works with every app out of the gate, the true multi-window apps will need updates. That's not supported just out of the box. But what we do get is unlimited slide-over apps. How much have you been using this? I'm finding this really useful to have all these apps. When I use my iOS 12 iPad, I'm remembering, I have to keep dragging back and forth between two slide-over apps from the dock, and that's no fun.
That was a big pain, and yeah, again, I'm getting a lot of use out of that. It seems to be kind of purging my lists quite a lot of what apps I've got in there. I don't know if that's the way I'm using it or if it's just a bit of a buggy installation I've got or something. I don't really know, but when it is working well, it's great. It's making things a lot quicker. I'm finding myself switching between apps a lot more, where before I used to maybe just kind of make do or not check that thing I wanted to check, because like I said, it's such a pain of bringing the dock up, dragging the thing back in, and sometimes it will replace the secondary app instead of going in the slide overview and stuff like that. But having a bunch of stuff all lined up in there now just to flick through is really good. It's like just having an iPhone attached to your screen, basically, because you can it kind of looks like one sticking out from the side, and then you can just flick through like you would any other app. It's that's good. It's definitely a nice feature to have.
Yeah, you can also flick up to get into your iPhone's app switcher kind of thing to see all of them just there. And something very cool is in the app expose, if you tap, say, on Safari, you'll have the full windows for all the full-size app instances, and then you'll have your iPhone-looking ones that are the slide-over ones, and you can have multiple windows within slide over, so you can have, say, 5 slide over notes that are all different.
Yeah, it's nice. I found myself getting a little bit confused which one I need to open. It can start getting a little bit messy, but it does give you a bit of a summary of what you're seeing and stuff, so it's still finally very usable, but it can get a little bit confusing when there's too many instances of the same app floating around in different spaces and stuff.
It solves a problem that I thought would be my idea of how this would be solved is you'd have in the slide over apps the ability to have a top and a bottom slide over app, and they'd be cut in half. But this seems to solve that problem pretty nicely.
Yeah.
You have less confusion, I think, this way, and being able to switch back and forth between, say, a calculator and something else in slide over is really useful. Something that I believe we both use is Shortcuts 3.
Yeah.
And it's a big jump. They've changed a lot about it, and one of the things is you can now automatically trigger shortcuts to happen when, say, you turn on airplane mode. You can have all sorts of other things just automatically happen without you doing anything, which is really interesting. Or, say, if I open up the Zoom Recorder app, conference app, so I'm getting ready for a conference call, I could, once that app opens, I could tell my iPad to, turn on Do Not Disturb, have Slack go in the Do Not Disturb, and fire off all these things. The automation without you needing to hit a button to automate is really nice.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge jump between the old version and now. I didn't expect them to kind of push it forward so quickly and in such a kind of dramatic way, I suppose. I haven't had too much chance to play around with setting anything too fancy up at this point. The update broke a lot of the current shortcuts I had, and I'm assuming I'm probably going to have to ditch a load of them and kind of rebuild. I've been kind of leaving it be for now until further updates, in case it kind of fixes stuff or I guess breaks stuff more, before I spend too much time trying to make complicated automated workflows and stuff. I've got some very basic stuff. I've got one for when I leave work, when I'm a certain vicinity away from work in the evening, it will launch my podcast app and stuff and start that playing, which is nice, but obviously a very basic example. But the possibilities are, you know, huge for what you could do. I just haven't thought of too many things, you know, too many, like I said, fancy things to build as yet. But I definitely will be over the next few months.
Yeah, one of the interesting ones they added as far as actions is you can have an action to change your desktop wallpaper. So your iPad can literally change its desktop wallpaper every time it connects to your home Wi-Fi to a different family photo, and when you get to work, have it change it to something else. And
yeah, that's nice.
There's all sorts of interesting possibilities.
Yeah, because I was looking the other day. There's some stock wallpapers that change when you change between dark mode and stuff.
Yeah,
I was thinking, I was wondering or kind of Googling if you could create your own versions of that, because I've got kind of wallpapers that would work like that, and I couldn't see anything, but. You know, like you just said, you could use something like that to switch wallpapers when you change to dark mode. And well, I don't know if you can use dark mode switch as a trigger, but you could set it for the same thing that triggers dark mode.
The sunset.
Yeah, exactly.
You can have the sunset trigger.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's something I'm going to be using, because I believe I can trigger accessibility settings with sunset and sunrise. And I use color filters to turn my iPads all red at night to help me sleep.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to look into doing that through automation rather than me clicking it on every night.
Yeah, it's a good use case.
So Shortcuts 3, that looks pretty great. And there is a setting now in the settings app for Shortcuts to allow non-gallery shortcuts. So all these people sharing shortcuts, you have to switch that on to make sure you're allowed to install all these scary shortcuts from the interwebs.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? When they're obviously trying to increase usage,
protect people.
I definitely get the benefit. It's a good example of them kind of putting users first above them, because you know you'd think you would want to get more adoption, and this could put a lot of people off if you think, you know, why would I need to be protected? What's the problem with all these other shortcuts and stuff? But equally, I've seen you know, people that share or download stuff off, you know, maybe Reddit forums, Reddit pages and stuff of, you know, shortcuts that contain their address details and stuff. You might think you're sharing a clever shortcut and forget to take your address out and stuff, you know. And I think once it's created that iCloud link, it's probably not very easy to. Well, I don't know how you'd even go and about getting that removed. So you could be pretty stuffed. So it's a good idea to keep that safe. You know, keep people protected from downloading malicious, because it can make API calls and all sorts of stuff, can't it? So I guess it could be sending your data all over the place without people realizing, if you're not kind of taking a lot of notice of what actions are running when you trigger a workflow that you've got off, or shortcut you've got offline somewhere. Another
big thing I think a lot of people will take a lot of advantage of is this new Apple Pencil markup feature anywhere in the system.
Yeah.
And it's so cool in Safari, where you can have this huge long page and it just looks so beautiful. I've tried third-party apps that try to combine URLs into a single page, and there's always little glitches. This seems perfect.
Yeah, it works so well. That little action of dragging up from the corner with the pencil is, even that is
it's so fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just such a nice little touch, and it works so well, like you said, and it just looks good. It displays it well. You can edit what you need to do quickly.
And I believe third-party apps will be able to do the full thing that Safari's doing, where if it's an app that scrolls, I think if the developer implements it, they'll be able to do the full screen thing just like they do, which will be nice.
Yeah, I think so. It's all part of the pencil, is it called Pencil Kit that you can use?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I'd look forward to seeing that same thing kind of spread out into other apps once it's publicly available.
And then something, if you're a HomePod user, that will affect your life is that handoff feature we saw actually does work with iPads. If you tap your iPad to a HomePod when it releases, it'll hand off the audio, which that's pretty neat. I thought it was iPhone only based on the keynote.
Does that work? Now, have you tried that? Does it actually? I tried it the other day and it didn't do anything.
It will when everything's updated.
Okay.
The HomePod needs an update, but on the Apple's website, it did say iPad will support that, which is, it's kind of cool that that's in there.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. You kind of scoop your music up as you walk out or something, can't you, and take it with you. It's a nice little touch.
Now, the new Mail app, are you enjoying the improvements there, or have you played around much with that?
I like it in theory. It's been very buggy for me, and it's not working very well. You know, the swipes are a bit weird, and it's it will. I kind of swipe to delete a mail, and it looks like nothing's happened. So I do it again, and it actually has deleted that mail and the next one as well. So it's definitely not working hugely well for me, but I like the enhancements they've done to it. It's not a huge redesign or anything. It's definitely pushing it forward. It's an app I already use. I already use the stock app just because I've moved around, or used to move around mail apps so much, and I just got bored of trying different stuff, and I've gone back to the stock with that one. So I will be making a lot of use out of it, but right now I'm not able to enjoy it to its fullest, I suppose, until it gets a bit smoother.
Yeah, something that I've realized is great with the mouse is just clearing out my inbox with that mouse for selecting mail messages I want to get rid of.
Yeah, I think you can like drag and select multiple ones, can't you, with some sort of action, I think.
Yep, you can, but yeah, the mouse just makes it easy to let me click through the ones I don't want.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, the Composer window is just so much better in the new Mail. It does feel like a desktop mail client now a bit more. There's still no way to add a link. A hyperlink, so you still need to use a shortcut to enable that functionality, which hopefully they get around to that next year.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I don't send a lot of email with links and stuff in it, but that's I didn't realize that you weren't able to do that, to be honest.
And then reminders, is that an app you're going to be using now, or are you going to stick to OmniFocus or Things or some other third-party app?
No, I'm definitely going to use that. Again, kind of in my phase of going for all the stock apps, I wasn't quite using the reminders app, but I was using the apps that sit on top of its kind of database. So I was using Good Task before. I don't need kind of really complicated task apps like you said, OmniFocus and stuff. So I was already keeping it fairly simple. But I'm really enjoying the new reminders. It's just kind of feature rich enough, I suppose, to give me that slight extra option that I didn't have in the old reminders app. But it's still, nice and basic, tied into the system well. It works well. You can nest tasks, or I guess they're not called projects, but they're essentially, you can create a project and tasks within there, subtasks within each individual task. So there's quite a lot to it, and it's definitely pushed forward. I like the look and feel of it as well. That's that one seems to be working quite well for me. So I definitely think, at least for the time being, I'll be using that as my main to-do app.
Nice. And then the home screen.
Yeah.
What's your approach to widgets now that those are always displayed, or can be if you want them to be? Yeah,
I like that. I've always used widgets quite a lot. I've enjoyed having the separate panel for them, and I've always kind of kept that up to date with a good setup. I always focus on using that. I often kind of keep a fairly clean home screen and then use that, but having them, at least a couple of them, stuck on the home screen is nice. I was expecting, to be honest, from rumors and stuff, a bit more of a change to the home screen. This is fairly minor, or kind of a tag on of what they already had. It's just persistently keeping two of them there, but it definitely gives the home screen a nicer look and feel, and it can be quite powerful with certain things on there. Obviously, a lot of stuff is a bit broken at the moment, or at least on mine, like Carrot Weather doesn't refresh quite a lot and different stuff like that. But I can definitely see myself using it now that there's a bit more focus on it in iPadOS. I guess developers would equally focus on it a little bit more. I think some widgets, or quite a lot of widgets, always seem to be a little bit of an afterthought, and they're not, they're not hugely useful, either kind of information rich or just very functional. So hopefully this will also encourage developers to put a bit more attention in it. Got, I think, Carrot Weather and the reminders widget on there at the moment, just while I'm kind of playing around with things, but I like it.
Yeah, and drag and drop does work from widgets. So developers that are doing those shelf apps, you could build out a pretty nice widget, and I think a lot of them actually already have widgets for that. So
that's interesting. I didn't know you could drag stuff off widgets. That's interesting.
Yeah, and with iOS 13 or iPadOS 13, you can actually drag notifications and make those as part of your split view or your slide over.
Yes, yeah, that's a nice addition again, isn't it? Just once again, just a small thing that makes a big difference the way you do stuff. It's nice.
I hope they really do expand that even more. Like everything should be draggable, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we can download stuff from Safari now. We didn't touch on that back when we talked about Safari. That's huge that actually works now. And then
you can even pick where with the downloads. You can pick where it goes as well, can't you? You can pick.
Yeah, you can say download into Google Drive
Yeah.
every time if you want.
Yeah, it's
if
good.
you're crazy.
I'm surprised
But,
they did
yeah.
that. I thought it would be, if a basic implementation, it just goes where it goes, and then you deal with it afterwards. But it's definitely good to have, again, more options in that.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Find My app, if you have a Wi-Fi only iPad and it gets lost, it'll do the local pinging. So it's not just AirPods that will benefit. If you have a iPad that's not always connected, that's going to be pretty useful for finding it, I believe.
Yeah, that's pretty smart, isn't it? I like that.
It's pretty cool. It reminds me of Batman a little bit. A Dark Knight.
Yeah, that's true. We've got to destroy it.
But the way Apple did it, it's brilliant. Yeah. And then the Notes app I love the gallery view. It reminds me a lot of Good Notes, the way they have that gallery. You can see all the pages and stuff. And that's, I think, just a nice change and makes everything more draggable because you can actually see it and touch it in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything we didn't cover about iPadOS that you want to dive into before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. That was pretty robust. Like I said, I just love that there's just these so many. I'm still finding these little bits and pieces as I'm digging around and stuff. So there's a lot more to it, I think, than even they showed in that quite detailed look in the keynote. So it's an interesting change and good to see a focus on it. I think at this point, iPadOS it's still good to see that they're focusing on it, and kind of giving themselves that impetus to always mention it, at a keynote. They're going to have to add something now that they've got a separate name for it and it's its own thing. So it can only be a good thing for iPad and iPad users, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm excited because before we were on an every 2-year cycle, and hopefully we get at least something new every year, which would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even if it's minor stuff, it still shows a focus and a commitment to it. So it's can only be good, I think. And
I guess they will continue to be called iOS because the iPod Touch is still a product in Apple's lineup.
Yeah, true. For now, at least.
For now, at least, yes. So thank you so much for your time, Andy. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on again. The best place, I guess, is on my blog on thedent.net. There's a contact page there, so you can find me on Twitter and micro.blog and stuff. It's probably easier just to go to that site and then find me from there. Save anyone trying to remember how to spell my name.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on today.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of iPad Pros. You can find the show notes over at iPadPros.net. You can send your feedback to me at iPadProsPodcast@gmail.com. If you email a voice memo, I'd be happy to include your audio in a future episode. I'm on Twitter at iPadProsPodcast. And as mentioned at the top of the show, if you haven't had a chance to review the show on Apple Podcasts, I highly encourage you to do so. Every review helps send signals to promote the podcast more in search and helps other people discover the show. Thank you for your time and attention today. Talk to everyone again real soon.